Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. Good day. Today my guest is Chris Nez. On the interview, I say Chris Ryan because that's what I saw as his profile name and his email when he sent it to me. So I actually didn't know his name was Chris Nez until he introduced himself, and I'm like, ooh. And that's happened before with some other guests. I have not known their full name or just part of their name or whatever. Anyway, so Chris Nez, and he emailed me because he just has this burning testimony about family history work, and you'll hear it throughout. Like, it seems like all the things in his life have come back to family history, which means family, which is the center of God's plan for us. And we're so grateful that we have a Savior who makes eternal families possible. I could have kept listening to him. It's kind of a longer episode because I just was enthralled with how much his life has changed because of these miracles that have happened in his life. So I hope you really enjoy this message today. Here's Chris Nez. Good morning. I am on the phone with Chris Ryan. He emailed me a couple days ago, and we were able to practically immediately set up an interview time. Chris, would you introduce yourself in your tribal way as much as possible? And if you can do it in your language, cool. If not, that's not everybody speaks their language, and some languages are dead. So,
that is Chris Nez in Shia. Nash Ejen Nadan Gay and Shla Glasche Bashashin, Zit Ad Kiani, Edashiche, Nut Otanet, Tachini, Dashanella, Tunanes Dizident Nasha, DJ, Hosdote, A Dishagan. So that was my introduction. That I am Zuni and Navajo, and my first clan is White Corn from the Zuni people, and my second clan is Red Bottom from my dad's clan, and my third clan from my maternal grandfather is near the mountain Towering House, and my fourth clan is from my paternal grandfather is the Tobacco people, Red Running into the Water. I'm originally from Tuba City, Arizona, on the western part of the Navajo reservation, and I currently live in the Phoenix area with my family.
Great. Chris, would you share something that you love about your heritage? A story, celebration, a ceremony, a way of life, anything, especially if it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really is a blessing and a joy to me is my heritage. I am a sixth member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. On my paternal side, through my dad's maternal side, they're Glasche, and they're from the Coppermine, Arizona area, which is near Page, Arizona. And my three greats grandmother, her name was Josephine Johnson. She became a member of the church in the late 1800s. And since she became a member of the church, we've pretty much her oldest daughter, Carrie Black, has been a member of the church. Her daughter, Nellie Acothley Wilson, has been a member of the church. My Nolly, Amelia Nez, my dad, myself, and now my children, are members of the church. And I think that, knowing my heritage and this choice that my great grandmother had made, and knowing the goodness of the gospel has blessed our each generation since then, and it's just something that is part of my heritage that has blessed my family many times over and has blessed each family members. We have hundreds of family within our family now, and just the many blessings that I've seen over the years and through a lot of family history work, that the blessings that everyone has received. And we come from a Navajo and Hopi heritage too on that side, and there's always been the two different, the church side of it, as well as respecting the culture and the language and traditions, have always been, intertwined with each other. And I think that's something that, is super, that I've learned through family history has been such a blessing.
That's awesome. So, you said you've done family history work. What kind of family history work have you done that, has really brought you to a strengthening of your own testimony?
So I'll just give a little history, I guess, behind how my journey of family history started. Was back in high school. I was in high school, and one of my biology teachers, was teaching us about traits and genetics, and we were asked to do a family history chart. And then I was like a freshman in high school, and at that time I didn't know, I just knew up to my grandparents. And my job and was to go and ask my grandparents, like, who's your parents, who's their parents. And I was able to get a little ways up, but I wanted to learn more. And just since then, that was about 18 years ago now. And so I've been doing family history pretty much since then. I got to go out and meet family members. I got to travel around, and a lot of my great grandparents are no longer here anymore. But I did have the opportunity back then to visit with them and speak with them. And through all that doing all this family history got me to really get a deep understanding of our culture and how it is very, I mean, it is pretty much the same teachings in the Book of Mormon, or from the Bible. Just a lot of the basic teachings of it. I found so many similarities and correlations with it, that it spoke to me and said that I'm on the right path. And this is, I felt through my own testimony, that this is the reason why my ancestors knew, joined the church and knew how how it resembled very closely to the teachings of the Book of Mormon, and the simpleness of it. And those are some of the things that I've learned over the years, and just learning a lot of their struggles. I think as you read the Book of Mormon and learn about Lehi and his family and the struggles that they encountered and the joys that they encountered, that's the same exact things that I learned in my own family history of the different challenges, trials that they faced, and all the joys that came with some of those as well.
As you've done your family history, have you found any of your direct line who have fallen away from the church and then come back?
Yeah, there's actually, as I did family history, me being a sixth generation member of the church, I knew that I had only known that through my dad's maternal side, that his families, his grandmothers had always been members of the church. They never really fell away from the church. They always were active members. And through family history, as I went back and learned more, I got to find out that I actually had more ancestors that were actually members of the church. One of the interesting stories that I have learned through family history work was that one of my grandmother's paternal grandfather, so this is my grandma's Nully man, he was actually a member of the church, and he was an interpreter for the missionaries in the Tuba City, Monkopi area.
That's
And
awesome.
he was, well known as an interpreter for the missionaries. And one of the really neat things that I got to learn is that he was able to go to the one of the Manti temple in Utah, and was able to go to the temple and receive his endowments, and to go through that process before and then I think it was about 10 years after that is when he had passed away. But learning through that story that he helped a lot of families in the Tuba City and Monkopi area, help them convert, or help them or taught them about the Book of Mormon and about the stories, and how it was a record of our people. And one of the neat experiences that I had through that was I had actually, since being a member of the church, all my life, I read the Book of Mormon. I have a testimony, and one time I was just driving in the car and listening to one of their conference talks, and they had prayed about, or they had asked, if you want to know if the Book of Mormon is true. I had already had my own testimony of it, but I thought, let me ask this question, just because I'd never asked that. I mean, I've asked the question, I've received my own revelation for that, but I just asked, and I was able to, through different through personal experience again, and then through the family search tool, there was some of the missionaries that were in the Tuba City and Monkopi area at the time. One of the granddaughters of this couple, had recently uploaded some stories and video recordings to Family Search for her grandfather, and he worked, with my great grandfather through the church, and I got to actually listen to his story that he told about my great grandfather, and how he had a strong testimony of the Book of Mormon, and how these were the stories of our ancestors. And one of the things that really stuck out to me and helped build up my testimony even more was how my great grandfather, his name was George Bancroft Sr., and he shared that one of the things that he taught to the people in the area was about the Book of Mormon, and how counting, as simple as counting in the Navajo language, the way you count numbers, once you get to 10 or past 20, and after that you start to add in let's see, so if you were to say, or you count money, you would say like not Nadine Dobaan, meaning like 20 and 1 for 21.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Book of Mormon, you hear that a lot, right? In the scriptures, is they would say that it was, 100 and 1 years, or 50 and 2 years. That's the way they counted in the Book of Mormon. And hearing that, from him, who, spoke, more Navajo, but began to understand English, and be able to translate and understand those things, that he gained his own testimony from that. And he said, a lot of the cultural or traditional things that that are being practiced, come from the stories of the Book of Mormon. And he made all these different ties to it, and it just strengthened my testimony. When you talk about burnt offerings that the people made a long time ago, and I think today, people who are still practice the traditional ways, or have a respect for it, they still do burnt offerings to this day. When they put down like cedar, or they offer prayers. And one of the things that I also learned through this family history is just how prayerful the people were. No matter what they went through, the different trials that they went through, they were always prayerful, and gave thanks for everything that they had. And so those are just some of the little treasures, I think, that I found through family history work, and that helped strengthen my testimony. But to hear, these accounts, I guess like almost firsthand from, one of the missionaries that worked with my great great grandfather, was pretty amazing, and how that story, made its way to me. Basically this information was shared to my home ward in Tuba City, and then somebody, they thought of me because I was doing a lot of family history, and said, hey, let's send this over to Chris. And it went through a few people before it got to me, and they said, hey, do you know this person? Maybe you might have an idea of who this person is. And as soon as I got it, that was hearing my great great grandfather's testimony, how the Lord works, and how it was able to get to me. And it was just a pretty neat experience that I was able to encounter.
That is really cool. That's cool. It's things like that too that are those tender mercies that just show that Heavenly Father is aware of you as an individual, and what you're interested in and what your needs are. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're married and you have kids, yes?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Were you married in the temple? Is she a longtime member of the church, or?
Yeah, so actually, me and my wife, her name is Amanda. We met at ASU, and we got married. We didn't get married in Temple initially. We had actually had gotten married at my home ward at ASU on the Tempe campus, and we had our daughters. We have Kayla, Katum, and Kian. And it wasn't until our 5th year anniversary, I think we had gotten married in the temple, in the Gilbert, Arizona temple. But my wife is actually a convert to the church, and she became a member of the church actually about 6 months. 6 months after our oldest daughter was born. So I think, with me, I think as growing up, I thought, I had always, wanted to, find somebody in the church, and, somebody who's shared similar, similar,
Beliefs,
similar faith, I guess, as me. And, one of the things that after high school, I had gone to college, and or I was thinking about going to college or serving a mission, and because I grew up in the church, so I felt like I had this path that I had to be on. But I had decided to go to college, and I think I was telling my wife, I always thought I would go on a mission and serve, but I had decided to go to school, and I went to school, but it had always been on the back of my mind about serving a mission. And one of the things that early in college that I had received was getting my patriarchal blessing. I didn't get it at the at the time that I should have, but I got it a little bit later. And one of the things in my patriarchal blessing was, I thought it might be about serving a mission, or preparing for that, but it was more about receiving, preparing to receive the Melchizedek priesthood. And then later in my patriarchal blessing was about, starting to pray about my future companion, and that, she would be somebody that is faithful, and that we would, work out our salvation together. And, I thought, when I had heard that, I thought that was interesting, because at the time I wasn't, looking for, I guess I was kind of focused just on school. But listening to that, and just continuing to go to church, and do my callings, or participate in church activities, I eventually got talking to my wife, and we met, and kind of just fell into there. And she, again, I knew that she wasn't a member of the church, but one day I was, we had gone back up to the city, and we were visiting my family up there. And, it happened to be on a Sunday, and it was it was actually a fast Sunday. I hadn't kind of known that I kind of forgot that it was fast Sunday. And I just, let her know that I was going to go to church that morning. And, I said, if you want to come, you can come, not, I don't want to force you to
No
come or
pressure.
anything. No pressure. Yeah. And that's how I always, thought too, is that, I wouldn't pressure, my wife or a featured companion to come to church. I would want them to attend because they want to, and for them to, get their own testimony. But, inviting her, and she did come with me. And again, it was Fast Sunday, and, she had never been to church before. And, there was just such wonderful testimonies that were given. And, one of those testimonies just touched her. And, she knew that, it was good. And it was something that she wanted to, learn more about. And so, she would continue to come with me, to church, wherever, if we went, we would attend Flagstaff if we were, visiting her family, or we were back down here in the Tempe, Phoenix area. We would go to, the church on campus at ASU. And so she, and she would take lessons with the missionaries. And so she kind of, started to, learn about the gospel, and was slowly starting to, develop her own testimony. And I would share, my experiences with her. But, one of the things that also helped strengthen my own testimony was just seeing that conversion of change. I always feel like, when I listen to people who are converts, they just have these, just, I don't know, amazing stories of their conversion. And, it's something that, I, as a member of the church, I went through, probably nursery, primary, young men's, and kind of went through, what I was supposed to. But just hearing the stories of somebody who's a convert, and to actually see that, that change with my wife, and, the things that she learned. And, and in my patriarchal blessing, she really is, a person that has strong faith, today. And, she's like perfect for me. We're perfect. She balances, the things that we do. And, and being a member of the church, I did have a time, where I think in college and after college, I just felt like, sometimes, I would feel like, do I still continue to do this, where I had maybe some challenges, with my own faith. But, the person that always said, let's go, we're going to go to church, let's get up and let's go, was my wife. And, her being a convert, and just, having that strong testimony that she had, that she was building, helped to keep me, in those times where I sometimes felt, not very strong, or I never doubted the gospel. I think just sometimes I maybe would get overwhelmed with some things. But my wife was the one that, really kept us, active. And, that's some of the things that, through that. And, as we were able to, we've been married, we're actually coming upon our 10th year anniversary in about a month and a half. And throughout this time, as through family history, I know my wife's family, and I talked to them. I got to, know a lot of her relatives, and, got really close, especially to a lot of her grandparents, and learned through family history that even on her side, she didn't know that there was people who were members of the church on her maternal side of her family. And so, just all these different connections, and these different experiences, and that we've had. And I think one of the most special experiences that we had was, when we was on our 5th year anniversary of being married. I mentioned that we went to the temple. We had always kind of planned to go to the temple when we first got married. And my wife, we had to take lessons. My wife, I wanted my wife to feel, comfortable, and wanted her to, kind of go at her own pace, and not rush things. And same for me, we wanted to be ready, to enter the temple. And, it took us a couple, actually 5 years, in our marriage before we felt, like we were ready. People in our ward and family members would always ask us, when are you guys going? You guys have a beautiful family. When are you guys going to the temple? But we just kept telling them, like, we're preparing, we're getting ready. And finally, it was time, and we did get married in the temple, and it was just, an amazing experience, and to experience it with our three daughters, who at the time were I think 2, 3.5, and like 5 years old. Um, was such a neat experience to just have that, and to be surrounded by, family and friends from church was, something that is, super important to us, and was just an overall, very spiritual experience, in the temple.
You said a couple things that I think are so awesome. You talked about how your wife really has encouraged you when you've felt less inclined to go, and I just think that sounds like such a great marriage that you have. And you also talked about just now taking all of your family and your girls with you. There's my favorite podcaster is named Sean Rapier. He has adopted 4 kids, and he's always saying, I kind of feel bad when people have never been able to experience taking their kids with them to the temple to be sealed as a whole unit. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm really happy for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that it was a really, I let's see. So we've been married again in the temple. It's going to be coming upon our, almost our 5th year. And so, I had been doing family history, like I said, for the last 18 years. And so up to that point, when we got married in the temple, I'd been doing family history for like 13 years. And, I've done many names and learned about, a lot of my ancestors through that. And, I mentioned that I had family members that would always, and ask, when we're going to the temple. I had my Nolly lady, she only had one brother, and he would always encourage us. He's my dad's uncle, and he was a strong member of the church. A lot of people knew him in the Page area, in the copper mine, just in the western part of the Navajo reservation. And his name was Franklin Wilson, and a lot of people knew him, and he would always encourage us. I loved it. He loved me. He loved my family. He would always say, you need to take your family to the temple, Chris, and you need to, your wife's beautiful, and, your kids are beautiful. You need to take them. And he was always rough with me growing up, with me and my brothers, and he would shake our hands like really hard. I think you have an uncle, you have
I know those
somebody,
kind of people.
yes. And he would pick on us, and he would just shake your hand hard. And I remember being little and just thinking, like, man, just like trying to loosen up my arm before I saw him. And he would just pick on us, but that was his way of, showing love. It's in his own way. And, he would always encourage, but, he got sick, and, he, one of the things that I always wanted to do was, to me was like, I always wanted him to be in the temple with us, when we get married. But he had actually passed away the year before. And, one of the things, I think for me internally, that was kind of, I was kind of bummed out a bit. My family, like I said, has been members of the church for a long time, but, some people didn't, my parents weren't able to be there. My siblings weren't able to be there as well. And, we had, some extended relatives that came from Utah, friends that came from Flagstaff, and I have an aunt, his daughter, that lives here in the Gilbert area, and she was able to come and come to our temple sealing, and it was just super special. Like I said, one of the things that I will never forget is me and my wife sitting in the room, in the hallway, waiting to go into the sealing room. And one of the things that the sealer had told us was, he kind of talked to us a little bit before, and one of the things he said was, hey, look, your guests are arriving. They're going in, and then we'll go in after them. And, we looked to the left, and we saw, our family, some of our family and friends, entering into the room. And then just then, it just felt like this huge, and this wall, this hallway was empty. And it just felt like when he said that, I felt, my wife felt, all of these family members. I had felt like the presence of my great grandmas, my people who had passed away, and because I grew up around them, and I could feel their presence there in the temple, and just the joy and the feeling of happiness that they were like rushing in to get to the sealing room. And I've gone to a lot of events with family members, whether it was something that we supported, whether it was like traditional, or I could just imagine them, their joy just like rushing together. And it was just amazing. Once we walked into the sealing room, and it just felt so full, like it just felt like it was standing room only in there. And I don't think people couldn't control their emotions in there. And once we went through that first process, and then they brought our kids in, one of the other things that really made my testimony super strong was that our youngest child, who could barely even stand, walked up to the altar and tippy-toed the whole time. and it was so amazing that's strengthened my testimony, because we had this yearning and knowledge of where we came from, and she was able to show us that it's something that she was familiar with, that she knew, and that she wanted to be a part of. And she, again, through that whole thing, she stood with her hand, just reaching up, and nobody helped her. And it was just people, and that were there noticed, and it was just an amazing feeling. And after everything was done, everyone kind of cleared out, and we, again, everything was good. We had, it was such an amazing time. But still, for me, I felt a little bit sad, because my colleague Franklin wasn't there. I mean, I felt he was there. I wished he was there physically. And we left, and we went to eat with my in-laws, and we talked with them, just sharing some of the sharing with them some stories and things like that. And then one, actually, on the drive over, my oldest at the time was only like 5, about 5. And she stood up, and we were ready to leave the temple grounds, and she stood up and she said, "Dad, Ollie Franklin was there." And immediately, it just hit me. And she said he was there. She said before he walked out, she said he patted patted our heads before he walked out. And to me, that's what he did to my kids. Like I said, he was rough with me, he was rough with my siblings, but with my kids, he was super, he wasn't rough with with my daughters. That was his thing with them, was he would pat their heads or rub their heads. And just such a neat experience in the temple to experience. And with my family. And I think just with with all the experiences I've had with doing temple and family history work, knowing how important this work is, and knowing that there definitely is more after this life, and how our ancestors, their spirits still live on, and they're just as alive as we are, doing work on the other side. And just how they celebrate things with us, even though whatever it may be. It's just such an overall neat experience. And again, that I was able to experience with my family, that we're always going to remember.
Well, I don't usually bring tissues in my closet with me when I record, but I needed one right now. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Yesterday at church, we talked in Relief Society about the talk from the New Zealand 70 guy. I forgot what his name is, about how our joy will be turned into sorrow, and our sorrow will be turned into joy. Um, and our teacher gave this analogy about how sometimes we feel like we've just are being dug in this hole and we finally reach rock bottom and we're like, how are we going to get out of this sorrow? And of course the Savior fills that hole up and more until our joy is overcome. I know it doesn't exactly like it didn't sound like you were like so so sorrowful that you felt like that, but your joy filled up that sorrow that you did have at that time and overcame it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, no, that's so true. Like, I think, as I've done family history, I think sometimes, I just, there's questions that I wish I got to ask family members or that I should have asked more and it also makes me, I was fortunate to grow up, when I was young. I think, growing up on the reservation, I got to travel a lot. I got to go. I probably don't look like, I went to sheep camp a lot or herd sheep or chased cattle or, did all those things. I probably don't look like that today, but I got to experience, a lot of those things with my great grandparents and great great grandparents and got to meet, a lot of people and relatives and travel. And I, as a young kid, I got to go with my dad's grandma and her sister. Their names were Nellie and Juanita. And I would travel with them to places and with my dad's mom, Amelia, and we would visit family all over in the western part of the reservation. We would visit a lot of people, and a lot of times, we got to go to, whether it was like a squad dance or a death ceremony or these different things. We didn't and one of the things that I learned through that is just their service and charity. They had a deep respect for for these traditions and practices. But one of the things that people could always count on, my grandmothers for was help. They would always provide food. They would always be there to help cook, to help to help with preparation, like cooking and feeding people. Like that was their thing. People could always count on them for that. And I still see that today in in their posterity of how people come to our family for for that kind of support, no matter what it is. For funerals, for family reunions, for all these different things. They that's still something that's like continued. But as a kid, I would listen into all these things, and I'm so grateful that I got to travel with them, because that's actually what helped with my family history. Was I would listen. I got to I don't speak the languages fluently, but I do understand them fluently. And I also got the opportunity to learn how to read and write it, in school. And just having that knowledge was able, help me to just learn people's names, learn about the area, learn about old stories. And I would pick their brain and ask questions. But even then, in our culture, it's kind of taboo, right, to ask questions, because sometimes they wouldn't speak about people who passed on. And so I got to learn how, and thankfully I had some relatives that would just, they knew about those things, but they would share it, in a way that maybe that wouldn't offend other people. And so, I got to go on a lot of these different travel adventures, I guess, and, learn a lot of these stories. And, to this day, like I know so many relatives. And when we moved here to the, Phoenix area, we started going to one of the wards down here. It's kind of like a Lamanite ward, I guess. I don't know if that's what it's still called these days, but come to find out, I have a lot of relatives, in the ward, and I've been able to connect with them. And there's people that I've messaged in Family Search, and they never message me back. And sometimes there's questions I still had, and come to find out, like, their parents are the ones that are in the ward, and here where we're at now, And I'm like, oh, because sometimes people's, they don't have their names, but they have their email address there, and maybe some of it's probably old, but is neat to finally connect with them, and to share how we're related. And I always just think, like, no matter where we go, I think being being Native American or Indigenous, wherever you go, you always have family, a connection with people. And I've tried for my work. I work in healthcare, and I've traveled, a lot of different places, and I've always met somebody that knows somebody, and I guess I've never felt alone anywhere I've gone, because there's always somebody, whether it's clan related or whatever it might be. There's always people, relatives, somewhere nearby.
That's that's so cool. And do you find relatives from both of your tribal lines?
Yeah, I have actually, through family history. My for growing up as a kid, I was always, we're probably more, I mean, we're more Navajo today, right? If you think of just, the last couple of generations, like we're more Navajo today, but with the further I was able to go back in family history, I have a lot of relatives, direct relatives, that are from the Zuni Pueblo, and from Hopi, and from some of the other Pueblos in New Mexico. And it was through this, I always heard stories as a kid, because my first clan is Zuni White Corn. And, I had always kind of thought, like, how, we speak Navajo, but why is this our clan? Or why do we say this? And, that my grandmas would, share stories, and, would kind of keep it very vague. And, as I kind of learned, and as I have learned now in the last, year or so, through family history and whatnot, is that, there was a time, before the long walk and after the long walk that happened, that, there were, before the long walk, a lot of the tribes, I think, they would go to war with each other or raid each other. But there were some that were really good friends, and, they would trade, whether it was, food, or jewelry, or, different rugs, or different, or potteries, things like that. And one of the things that, through the pandemic last year, that, I had gotten to do, was I really got to do a lot of family history. And during Christmas, I think one of the coolest gifts that I think I will always be appreciative of is doing family history, because I was able to come upon tape recordings from the 1960s.
No way.
And yeah, 1960s. And I got to find a lot of my relatives, from all four of my sides, from my mom's maternal and paternal side, my dad's maternal and paternal side, and people that I had, because I had gone, so far back in my family history, but I kind of got to like I got stumped, because the people that I needed to get this information from, were no longer alive, and they were the ones that had this knowledge. And so I was kind of just like stumped. I just thought, like, I want to learn more. I want to go up further in my family tree. And again, it came that actually I had kind of already known about, these oral stories, because they're actually housed in the University of Utah. They have an archive, and this is one of those things that, I think is kind of a bit of a, touchy topic on my side of the res, is the Navajo Hopi land disputes that happened.
Yeah.
And I think today it's still kind of, you feel, I think there's still some of that around. But, and I was telling my wife, and family, that, as much of a hardship that was on people, one of the very unique blessings that I saw, I've come to kind of get out of it, is these audio recordings that they did. Because what they did was, the government had gone around and, and pretty much found like the oldest people living in communities throughout the Navajo, and they also did it for the Hopi reservation too. They found like the oldest living people in those in communities throughout, and they would interview them. So somebody would bring them into, a chapter house, or some building, and would interview them, and they would have an interpreter there who would ask them questions. And it just, to me, it was like I hit gold. It was in December. It was probably like the best Christmas gift to me. Was I was so excited, and because I had asked for these transcripts, and I thought I was only getting transcripts that were typed up, and that was good enough for me. But the ladies that helped me at the University of Utah said, "Hey, we just recently translated some of we were able to, record these audio tapes or cassette tapes and make them digital." And I was just like, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah, you just submit a form and tell us what volume, what tape it is, and we'll send it to you." And the power of technology, right? And I was able to get my hands on those audio tapes through a Google Docs transfer in like less than a couple days. But just the anticipation of waiting for that, and I finally got my hands on the tapes, and I listened to the first one I listened to was my maternal. Let's see, I think it's maternal three greats grandmother. And, I had always heard these stories about, how we got our clan and why is it Zuni in there, and all these things. And she told, this story that I've heard from different people. There was always a little bit different in the story, but she told, and this was, our Zuni grandma was her grandmother. And she was speaking Navajo because her dad was Navajo and her grandpa was Navajo, and they had moved from her grandfather, his name was Ashihinez, from the Big Mountain area, and he had friends in Zuni Pueblo. This was all before the long walk, and he had friends in the Zuni Pueblo, and he actually met he had a family, or knew a family out there, and he met his wife, who was from the Zuni Pueblo. She was Corn Clan. And, when they married, he actually moved to him and his wife, moved to the Big Mountain area, but they would always, visit Zuni a lot. And so when they moved to the Big Mountain area, they had children. And then, those children lived in that Big Mountain area. And then, but with my great grandmothers, they actually moved through the Blue Canyon area that kind of leads up to the city in the Moenkopi area. And that's actually where, that's why my family's still there in that area today. But, I got to learn all these really neat stories and hear it, first account from them. And and I think one of the things that I said that, as a kid, I got to travel around. I didn't speak Navajo fluently, but I got to hear the words, and, I got to, practice some of it. And I became, over the years, became fluent and hearing conversations in Navajo. And I was able to pick that up. And so I'm, just grateful that I got to do that, and that my grandparents, spoke the language so I could learn it that way. And so when I got to these tapes, I didn't have to have an interpreter because I understood, them speaking. And is like just an amazing experience. When I got these tapes, I got, a lot. I probably got close to 20 of them of relatives. And one of the neat things was I got to those holes, or those areas in my family tree that, I mentioned that I was kind of stumped on. I got to learn like 3 more generations up, and in some cases 4 generations up, because in these interviews they would ask them, and it was the same structure for all of them. What's your name? What's your age? What's your clan? Where did you live? Where's the farthest, east, west, north, and south? And then they would ask them, then go into, what was your mother's name? What was her clan? Where was she born? Is she still living? Did she pass away? These questions. And then they would ask the same for your father. And then they would say your mother's mother, and then your mother's father, and then your father's mother, your father's father, and then they would even go into their great grandparents. And to me, they didn't. And in these interviews, sometimes they would say, "I don't know what the purpose of this is," but they shared it. And to me, it was a blessing. It was an answer to my prayers. Sometimes I think we don't know, why we're doing something or why something's being asked of us. But, we know somewhere in our hearts that, there's probably going to be a good purpose behind it later on. And I always feel like that with family history. When I think of a story or when I think of a memory, I share it with my kids. I share it, and I have a lot of other family members who, don't know our culture, our heritage, or our family history very well. So when I think of something, I have the app on my phone, and so I will type in a story, or I will record a story, or upload pictures or things like that, so that future generations will have all this information now, at the tip of their hands to access. And those stories, like I said, are just, to me, there it was an answer to my prayers. And it took many years, but I feel like that was something that when it in its own time, came to be. And it's been amazing since I've heard those stories. I go back and listen to those stories every now and then, just because these people or these family members were born just right after the long walk, and so they have this, and that made me more humble about that whole experience of what they went through. And I had mentioned that my grandmothers were Zuni, and they lived with on the Navajo parts of the reservation. And they didn't say, are you this tribe or this tribe? They were taken to Fort Sumner as well. And just the stories that the things that they endured, but they were always prayerful. That was one of the things that I got out of these stories, is they always prayed. And that's what made the connection with me and with the Book of Mormon again, is that Lehi, and the things that Lehi and his family endured, the things, that the challenges that they experienced, there was always happiness though. They always found happiness, they always found joy, or there was always a teaching message that was shared. And I found that in all of these oral stories that were shared. And just I don't know, it's gonna have no words, I guess, for the blessings that I've received from it. Just there's a ton.
Wow. That is amazing. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to know that you belong to the tribe of Israel?
Yeah, that to me, that's it's just an amazing blessing, to know that I am from am a direct descendant from the tribe of Israel, and that I and that I'm a literal son of the prophets. That was one of the things in my own patriarchal blessing that was given to me, was that I am a literal son of the prophets. And I don't take that lightly. It's such a blessing. And I think we've always, as Native American people or Indigenous people, I think we always we know that we are from the a tribe of Israel. It's important for us, in the church, to know the tribe that we come from and the blessings that are within that. And again, this is one of my things that I know, that the church is true. I know that the Book of Mormon is true, and I know that the things that our ancestors believed and practiced, come from the simple truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we have, whether no matter what culture we come from, whether it's Navajo, Hopi, Zuni, other pueblos, or other tribes throughout the continent, that clans are important and families important. And I the way we come from a tribe of Israel, we, as Native Americans, we come from a clan, right? We know who our mother's clan is. It's super important for us to know that and to know where we come from. And it's the same thing with the tribe of Israel. For us, it's important to know where you come from and the blessings that come from that. And, to me, it's something that is always going to, as I do family history, as I, continue to grow my testimony, it's important for me to know those blessings and to know, my role and, the things that I'm supposed to do, for myself individually, but also for my family, and, to help others, kind of realize those things, and so that they may develop their own testimonies. And so it's just, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of immense blessings that come from, knowing the tribe that you come from, and how, it will bless your life, and, in all aspects.
Thank you so much. I have learned so much, and I have felt the Spirit as we've talked. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. I like I said, I listened to the other podcasts, and it's just, I thought, I just had this prompting, like, you should share this. This is a really neat place, to help others and to encourage others to, one way to really grow your testimony is through family history, through knowing knowing your relatives, because they're just waiting. They're excited for you to learn about them. And me just saying that, I can feel the excitement, of them just waiting for us to learn. I don't think they endured all the things that they endured or encountered in their life, wasn't meant to be forgotten. It's to help strengthen us and to help us to grow. And like I said, there's an excitement, and I think when you really search and pray about it, those things, you will find them. And I think that's one of the best things, of being a member of the gospel, is how, no matter what you do, praying, if you continue to pray always, you will be blessed. And that's one of the things that our family has always taught, is to pray always.
Cool. Thank you. So today, as I'm recording this right now, it is the day after General Conference. It's Monday. I was doing really good at listening to General Conference on Saturday, and then I got word that my brother was in the hospital with COVID. So he's been in my thoughts a lot, and I got distracted from General Conference because of that. So I didn't hear everything that I probably should have heard. I didn't internalize things I probably should have internalized. I really loved Elder Vai Sekahema's talk about order. I really loved the music on Saturday afternoon. Consider the Lilies and This is the Christ. Those really were powerful to me, and those moved me. I loved Camille Johnson's talk about letting God prevail, and I loved her analogy or her examples of David and Goliath, and Esther and Mordecai and the king, and just, well, I've talked to you guys about letting God prevail, and I guess those really stuck with me. I liked Elder Suarez's "Judge not, that ye be not judged." The other two that I really loved were Elder Uchtdorf's "The Walking in Circles" one, "Without the landmarks we deviate and get off course." And the other one that I really loved was Elder Wilcox's about we don't have to be perfect. In fact, the Lord doesn't expect us to be. But he just said it so plainly and perfectly that I was so grateful for him. I hope that you found peace this weekend. I hope you found encouragement this weekend, and I hope that your testimony was strengthened. I hope that you are having a super wonderful, awesome day. Tribe of Testimonies is not affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. If you know someone who might be interested in being a guest, please reach out to me at tribeoftestimonies gmail.com.